Welcome to the deep dive. You know that feeling when you bite into something so perfect, pillowy, soft, warm, gooey, intensely cinnamon that you momentarily forget the world exists?
I do.
We are dedicating this entire deep dive to that feeling because today we are pursuing the elusive, best ever cinnamon roll.
It's a noble quest, for sure. And based on the material you, the learner, sent in, it's
Yeah.
clear that best is it's a highly subjective, highly debated term.
It really is. We have a fantastic stack of sources here, from like the sheer volume of the Pioneer Woman's recipe to the technical precision of these Cinnabon copycats like Zoha and Lizzie T.
A really great cross-section.
Our mission is not to just give you one recipe. The goal is to distill the core baking philosophies hidden inside all these sources. We want to understand the strategic, game-changing secrets.
Right, the difference between a soft, tender roll and, say, a tall, chewy one. What makes some rolls melt in your mouth and others hold their shape perfectly.
Exactly.
And it truly comes down to four fundamental variables. The structural decision you make in the dough, the method you choose for the filling, this viral secret ingredient that adds moisture, and finally, the temperature check.
Get those four right, and you choose your cinnamon roll destiny.
You really do.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the beginning with the foundation. The dough dilemma. The differences in just the scale alone are massive.
Oh, yeah.
Reed Drummond's recipe is designed for what looks like a military operation. It yields 40 to 50 servings, 9 cups of flour, and a quart of milk.
That is clearly a recipe for feeding an entire neighborhood or, preparing for the entire holiday season. Most of the other recipes we look at are focused on a standard 9 by 13 pan.
So like 10 to 12 servings, much more manageable.
Right. But regardless of the quantity, the most critical decision you face here is the flour itself.
Right, because that decision immediately dictates the final texture. If you want that tender, sort of melt-in-your-mouth home-style feel, Sally's Baking Addiction sticks to all-purpose flour.
Exactly. All-purpose has a lower protein content, which limits gluten development, and that results in a roll that is super soft and delicate. It's perfect if you're prioritizing tenderness over, say, structural height.
But if you've ever had one of those truly tall, fluffy, slightly chewy bakery rolls, that's not all-purpose flour.
No, you're looking at bread flour.
Bread flour, with its higher protein content. It's favored by sources like Kitchen, Lizzie T, and Zoha. Why is that extra protein such a game changer for cinnamon rolls?
Well, because it develops more gluten when you need it. And gluten is the structure, is the skeleton of the bread.
Skeleton, okay.
By using bread flour, you're building a stronger matrix that can handle that heavy, buttery filling and the heavy cream soak we'll get to later without collapsing.
So it lets the rolls rise taller and hold that fluffy but still kind of sturdy crumb?
That's what some people adore. So the first choice for you is chewiness and structure versus simple tenderness.
And the second crucial choice is time. Cinnamon rolls are notorious for being a big-time commitment, and we saw a real conflict here between traditional long rising times and some great modern shortcuts.
The traditional path, it often involves a double rise or optimally an overnight chill. Sometimes up to 3 days, I think the Pioneer Woman suggests.
3 days.
And that overnight rest is fantastic because cold dough is easier to handle, and that slow fermentation develops a deeper, more complex flavor.
Okay, but what if you wake up Saturday morning and decide you absolutely must have fresh cinnamon rolls that afternoon? What's the shortcut?
The shortcut is focusing on a single post-shaping rise. Sally's recipe specifically addresses the yeast beginner by requiring only one rise.
List one.
Just one for 60 to 90 minutes after the rolls are already shaped in the pan. You lose a little of that depth of flavor from the slow ferment, but you drastically cut down the time.
Makes them much more accessible.
For sure, even on a busy day.
So, assuming we've committed to the longer, high-protein path for maximum fluff, we have to talk about kneading. Zoha is very clear. Improper kneading is the easiest way to fail.
Without a doubt. Whether you use AP or bread flour, if you don't knead enough, those gluten strands just aren't developed, and you end up with a heavy, dense roll.
A tragedy.
A real tragedy. Zoha gives us the definitive test for success. The window pane test.
The window pane test, that's the moment when the dough is perfect. For anyone who hasn't tried it, what exactly are we looking for?
You take a small piece of dough, and you stretch it gently between your fingers. If you can stretch it thin enough that light shines through the center, like a little window pane, without the dough tearing, you've done it.
And that means the gluten is fully elastic and strong.
Strong enough to support the roll's rise. Exactly.
For you using a stand mixer, how critical is it to hit that 7 to 10 minute range that Zoha mentions? Or is it purely about just looking at the dough? What if I pull it out at 6 minutes because I'm impatient?
Rushing is truly the enemy here. If you pull it too soon, the consequence is structural failure. The roll won't expand properly in the oven. It won't be able to hold up to the heavy sugar and butter.
So all that work is for nothing?
Pretty much. Those strong gluten strands are like tiny internal balloons. If they aren't strong, the whole thing deflates into a tough hockey puck no matter how good your ingredients are.
That puts the structural integrity of kneading into perspective. Once we've mastered the dough, we move to the glorious, messy middle, the filling. This is where the ooze factor is decided.
And we have another philosophical split here. Volume versus control.
The volume approach is definitely the pioneer woman.
Oh, yeah. Her goal is maximal gooiness, so she uses melted butter, 1.5 cups of it poured directly over the dough, followed by like 1.5 to 2 cups of sugar and spice.
That sounds incredibly messy.
It's absolutely messy, difficult to handle, and almost guaranteed to leak, but the result is indisputably decadent.
The pure indulgence strategy. So contrast that with the controlled paste method from Kitchen's, Zoha, and Benti cakes.
The paste method uses softened, room-temperature butter that is pre-mixed with the sugar and cinnamon, creating a thick, spreadable, almost frosting-like filling.
Ah, so you have more control.
It's crucial for control. You get much more even coverage, and because the butter isn't melted, it's less likely to just seep out and burn in the pan.
And the sources even differ on the type of sugar in that paste.
Yes, this was interesting. Kitchen specifically calls for dark brown sugar in the filling. Most others use light brown sugar, but the darker version has more molasses, which gives the filling a deeper, richer, almost malty flavor.
Which would stand up well to all the spice and frosting.
Exactly. It's a subtle but important upgrade if you want that depth.
Okay, so once that filling is perfectly layered, messy, or controlled, it's time to roll and slice. Traditionally, it's a sharp knife or famously dental floss.
Lizzie T and Sally's both champion the floss method.
For a clean, non-squished cut, right?
Right. But here's where Zoha offers a genuinely disruptive technique for guaranteeing perfection. The strip method.
The strip method, okay.
Instead of taking the entire rolled log and slicing it, which always squishes the ends, Zoha advises cutting the flat, rolled-out dough rectangle into about 12 long individual strips first.
Wait, that sounds like way more work. Wouldn't rolling 12 little strips be far more time-consuming than just slicing one big log? Is it really worth it for the average person?
That's a fair challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely takes more time, but the structural claim is compelling. By rolling each strip tightly on its own, you achieve a much more controlled, perfectly round, and uniform swirl on every single roll.
So you avoid the stretching and the inevitable smash that happens with a knife.
You avoid the smash. It's the difference between, say, mass production and artisanal precision.
So you sacrifice speed for guaranteed structural perfection in the swirl. That makes sense if you're aiming for a showstopper.
And regardless of your rolling method, Betty Cakes gave us one small, brilliant piece of advice for securing that log. That's when you reach the final seam, don't try to seal it with butter. Use small dabs of water instead, because the butter will just make the dough slide apart as it bakes.
Water creates a sticky seal. That's clever.
Super clever.
Now we arrive at the game changer, the viral secret ingredient that promised the ultimate gooey factor. This is where those Cinnabon copycats really diverge from the traditional methods.
This is the heavy cream secret, and we found it in the sources from Lizzie T and Zoha. The instruction is to pour about a half cup of warm, heavy cream over the shaped, unbaked rolls just before they go in the oven.
Now, you emphasized warm cream. Why can't I just grab it straight from the fridge?
It's purely logistical.
Wow.
You've just spent all this time getting your yeast dough warm and active. Hitting that delicate, inflated dough with refrigerator or cold cream will essentially shock the yeast.
And cause the rolls to deflate.
Yes, and it impedes the final oven rise, the crucial oven spring. It needs to be warm, almost body temperature.
Okay, so assuming the temperature is right, what's the chemical mechanism here? What does this high-fat liquid actually do in the oven?
It creates a miracle of moisture and caramelization. The cream sinks immediately into the empty spaces around the rolls, and crucially, down to the bottom of the pan. As the rolls bake, that cream is steaming, keeping the dough incredibly moist and tender. Then, the high fat content and the sugar from the filling combine and begin to caramelize on the bottom.
So this high-fat liquid basically replaces the air in the pan, creating a steamy environment while the sugars caramelize and create a sauce.
Precisely. Lizzie T calls the result an irresistible caramel sauce on the bottom. It ensures that the lowest layers of the roll don't dry out or burn. They become unbelievably soft and saturated with this rich, buttery caramel.
It's the single best method we found to guarantee ultimate gooiness.
By far.
That's truly fascinating. But what if a learner doesn't have heavy cream on hand? Is there any substitute that achieves a similar effect?
You need a high-fat alternative, because the fat is what contributes to the caramelization and the moisture. Lizzie T and Zoha suggest evaporated milk, half and half, or even coconut cream.
But not regular milk.
They explicitly warn that regular whole milk is not effective. Its fat content is simply too low to produce that thick, caramelized sauce we're aiming for.
Okay, so we've established the dough, the swirl, and the gooey secret. Now let's talk final prep, the bake itself.
The temperature consensus is pretty tight. Most recipes hover around 375 degrees Fahrenheit, although a few like Zoha and Benti Cakes drop it slightly to 350.
But the most important lesson across all of them
Is avoiding overbaking. A dry cinnamon roll is a failure, regardless of how good your ingredients were.
And for maximum precision, how do we use that probe thermometer? We don't want to guess.
You absolutely should not guess. Use the thermometer in the center of the roll, avoiding the filling. The sources agree the rolls are perfectly done when they register between 190 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
And if the tops are browning too fast?
Just cover the pan loosely with foil and continue baking. Simple fix.
Once they are out and cooling slightly, we move to the final necessary indulgence, the frosting face-off. We have two very distinct philosophies here.
We do. Most sources, Kitchen, Sally's, Lizzie T, Zoha, they stick firmly to the classic cream cheese frosting.
The standard.
The standard. Cream cheese, butter, powdered sugar, vanilla. It provides that essential tanginess to cut through the intense sweetness and richness of everything else.
But the pioneer woman takes a riskier path, embracing complexity with her unique maple coffee frosting.
This frosting is a powerhouse. It demands 2 pounds of powdered sugar.
2 pounds, wow.
And the complexity comes from adding maple flavoring and strongly brewed coffee concentrate. Ree essentially tells the baker to, just trust me, claiming the coffee and maple enhance the flavor in the most magical way, without tasting like a latte.
So it's for someone who wants a deeper, more sophisticated flavor that's not just that typical cream cheese tang?
Exactly.
But regardless of which one you choose, there is absolute consensus on when to apply the frosting.
It must go on while the rolls are still warm. Not scalding hot, but warm enough that the frosting melts slightly. The goal, as the pioneer woman beautifully puts it, is for the warm roll and the icing to become one.
So the icing seeps into all the gooey layers instead of just sitting on top like a stiff cap.
Yes, it becomes part of the roll.
Finally, for anyone who wants to conquer their holiday mornings or just plan ahead, let's talk make-ahead strategies. This recipe takes time, so prep is key.
You have several excellent options covered across the sources. The simplest is freezing the rolls unrisen.
So you shape them, put them in the pan, and freeze them just like that.
Exactly. Cover and freeze for weeks. When you're ready, you just thaw them overnight in the fridge, and then let them rise at room temperature before baking as usual.
That's great for maximizing that fresh baked taste. What about a semi-baked option?
Sally's provides the par baking method. You bake the rolls for about 10 minutes, cool them completely, and then freeze them. This stabilizes the dough.
So when you're ready, you can finish baking them from frozen.
Right. And it's much faster than starting from raw dough.
And if you just want to freeze the final finished product, frosting and all,
You can do that too, per Ree's method. Bake and ice them, let them cool completely, and freeze. When thawing, let them sit overnight in the fridge, then rewarm them loosely covered in a 350 oven for about 20 minutes.
it's comforting to know that once you've mixed that dough, you can save your product at basically any stage.
It really is.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? After diving into this stack, we've found that the best ever roll isn't a fixed recipe, but more of a customizable system.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You now have the knowledge to select your path. If speed is your priority, you know the single rise all-purpose route. If you want maximum chew, fluff, and height, you commit to bread flour and the window pane test.
And if gooiness is everything,
Then the heavy cream soak is non-negotiable.
the knowledge we extracted here shifts the power dynamic. You're no longer just following instructions, you're actively choosing the structure and texture you want to create.
And that strategic thinking leads to our final provocative thought. Several sources suggested customizing the filling, introducing things like raspberry or lemon curd, or chocolate spreads instead of cinnamon.
Right, so if the dough structure and the heavy cream secret are so powerful at dictating that final pillowy, gooey texture, does the flavor profile even matter as much?
That's the question. The key to a truly best ever roll might not be in the cinnamon at all, but in mastering the dough structure and the gooey texture so that it can handle any exciting complex filling you invent.
Master the foundation.
And the possibilities for new best ever creations are endless.
That's certainly food for thought and for breakfast. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.